How does fawning lead to toxic relationships and increased risk of abuse and mistreatment for autistic people? Let's find out. Welcome. Thank you so much for watching. I'm orionkelly, that autistic guy, and I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. Let's talk about fawning and autism. Are they connected? Do autistic people use fawning more than any other stress response than neurotypical people? I guess we're going to start with, what is fawning? Well, in basic terms, fawning is using people-pleasing to avoid conflict. And in addition to the goal of avoiding conflict, fawning, people-pleasing, is also used to earn the approval of others. Fawning is one of the 4 survival responses used by our brain, simply put, to detect and avoid danger. I've used this word many times in my videos, but just in case you're new, it's located in a part of our brain called the amygdala. As an autistic person with diagnosed anxiety, my amygdala is firing off like I'm a caveman, constantly under attack by big predators. So let's walk through the process. Our brain has 4 survival responses it uses to detect and avoid danger. And how does it do that? Well, it senses that through the senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. If any danger is detected through those senses, the amygdala is activated. In other words, our brain puts us into a survival mode. Now, for our ancestors, the cavemen, this might have been helpful. I guess it would make sense because you don't want to become a tasty snack for a saber-toothed tiger, cat, or woolly mammoth. On the other hand, for modern day humans, not so much. And this is what I find fascinating. As autistic people, we know what's different about us is our brain. We have an autistic brain, not a neurotypical brain. But then we think, okay, how do you work out the brain? The brain is so hard to understand. And then you think about it like, hang on, are you saying that the survival part of our brain, our amygdala, is really no further evolved than it was for cavemen back in the day who needed it very specifically to stay alive? And the answer is, in short, sure, things evolve, but the answer is, in short, yeah, we're pretty much still walking around in the modern day world with a caveman brain. And this is a problem. Why? So let's say through the senses, your brain, your amygdala, it actually detects a type of danger and it activates a survival response. And as you know, there's 4 survival responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Okay, but then how does it activate it? This is a part where it doesn't feel good at all. Your amygdala sends a signal, obviously to your brain, to release adrenaline, to release cortisol, a stress hormone, and various other chemicals, releasing them all throughout your body, pulsing through your very being. And upon this activation, what happens? As I'm sure you understand, when you feel like you're filled with stress, these stress hormones, these feelings of danger, when there's no woolly mammoth or saber-toothed tiger about to kill you, but you feel like there is, your brain has made your body feel like this, what happens? Well, my understanding would be your heart rate will rise, right? It'll increase, ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And also probably your circulation increases. In fact, it is in essence, so you're able to outrun this woolly mammoth or saber-toothed tiger. You'll also notice when this activation occurs and all these chemicals and stress hormones are pumped, adrenaline pumped through your body, what also happens? We start to breathe harder, faster. Why? For the body to produce more oxygen, to go directly to our brain and our limbs, so we can outrun the woolly mammoth or saber-toothed tiger. Now, it's at this point, that we must choose which stress response works for us: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And like we said at the start of the video, fawning is, in effect, people-pleasing, which sounds odd. It sounds strange. What do you mean, Orion? Are you saying what? Someone attacks me and I thank them. Again, this is a very complex conversation. And we're going to get to that, I promise. I just want to make sure everyone understands it. Okay, so your senses pick up on some sort of danger, right? Because of the caveman brain. The amygdala activates this response. That response that we talked about, these chemicals surging through and your heart rate and your blood pressure and your breathing and your oxygen production, all this kind of stuff, that is the starting point to trigger you into action, to go, what do I do? Am I going to fight? Am I going to get out of here? Am I going to just freeze like I saw a snake and I'm just going to let the snake go over my leg and just calmly just stand here like a tree, which is a good idea? Or am I going to fawn? That's your decision. So let's talk through these 4 decisions, just in a sentence, that's all. So, okay, let's say you choose to fight. What does that mean? You choose to face any perceived threat with aggression. You choose to face it head on. How about flight? Pretty simple. Your choice is to run away from danger, to get the hell out of there. Third response is freeze, which I think we all kind of get. Stop, shut down. Some people freeze involuntarily in a way where they have shut down. They have either disconnected from their own body, like the soul and the body are disconnected, or they have somehow, the brain is shut down to a way where they don't even know they're frozen. They're frozen. Some people say, oh, you're frozen with fear. So there's many different responses based on freeze. None of these should be judged. They're all possibilities, your brain, but this is a problem, right? Your brain is not only identifying it and sending the signal, but then your brain is choosing it. Because people go, oh, your brain detects it, sends a signal, and then you choose it. Well, no, you are your brain. So what type of brain do you have, and how does that impact what you choose? You see what I'm saying? So that's a general view of the 4 responses, but how about I now break them down through an autistic lens? Again, in like a sentence. Fight. What is that in an autistic sense? Meltdown. What's the flight response through an autistic brain? Eloping, bolting, wandering. Again, if you look up those words in an autistic perspective, you'll notice that these are core issues in bad things happening to autistic people. Where did my autistic kid go? Oh, great. My autistic kid has just bolted towards the ocean, towards traffic, has just wandered away from school. You might think, bloody autistic kids. I would say, I wonder what stressed them. Yeah, that's right. They did it because their brain perceived a threat. They're not just annoying. Wow, groundbreaking, Orion. For autistic people, the freeze response, you've already got this, is an autistic shutdown. It's like the brain just disconnects, reboots, sorry, stand by, wheel of death. And what about fawning for autistic people? I reckon you do this every day. Maybe I'm doing it right now. Fawning for autistic people is masking. The stress response of fawning is, in effect, us choosing to camouflage, suppress, mask our true autistic selves, our true autistic traits. Why? To deal with a perceived threat, a danger, an actual threat or danger. And this isn't a video on masking, and I've done plenty of those. But if you're just wondering, autistic masking is where autistic people basically suppress, hide, camouflage their true autistic selves, responses, traits, in effect to fit in, to be accepted, to please people. It could be said that indeed autistic masking is a modern day survival instinct. I think it is. But then you could say, well, it doesn't need to be added to the list because really fawning, that stress response, is masking. So what does that mean? Autistic people are reacting to a stress response minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and in effect are masking as cortisol, adrenaline, and other chemicals are pulsing through their body? Probably. And before we get onto some common signs of fawning, which I think you might relate to, let's just leave it at this. Autistic people mask, and I'm equating that to a stress response. How? I put it to you that autistic people, or the autistic person in your life, fears not being accepted or not fitting into society as a real danger. Not fitting in, not being accepted in every single situation of our life on a day-by-day basis can be viewed as autistic people as a form of danger. I mean, I just blew my own mind. Let me give you some common signs of fawning. Constantly attempting to please and appease others. Are you a serial people pleaser? Another common sign, ignoring your own beliefs. Do you find yourself constantly ignoring your own beliefs, values, even ideas to then follow those of other people's? Let that sink in. Do you have to actually ignore your own beliefs in order to follow the beliefs of other people? This is a good one. I think you might relate to this as an autistic person. Do you rely on the reactions or the thoughts, the opinions, even emotions of others to determine your own thoughts and emotions? So to determine your own thoughts and emotions, you're actually relying on the thoughts, emotions, reactions of others. How does that even make sense? Don't we do that? I swear we do that. Another common sign of fawning, an inability to set boundaries and say one sec. You know what I'm trying to say. If you don't, I was trying to say you made me say it. Another common sign of fawning is a lack of a personal identity. This can also manifest in sometimes simply just imitating others. In other words, who are you? Who's the real you? Conversely, but really the same thing, is people can go, do you have a personality or interests? You feel like, I don't know who you are. What, are you empty? Have you lost sight of your own beliefs, your own morals, your own ideas, your own ethics, your own view of the world? Have you lost sight of who you are, where you stand? That is another sign. Another common sign of fawning is ignoring your own needs to address the needs of others. And a big one, in my opinion, do you respond to criticism, so take it a step further, to danger, to stress, with an apology, with praise, even admiration? You know, this is where I find this really fascinating. Let's think about it like this. Let's look at it externally and internally. But first, externally. So when you think about it, fawning is in essence a positive experience. Do you see what I'm saying? Externally. In other words, externally, it can be one of the most difficult negative behaviors to view, to find, to identify. The criticism thing's a great example. You're an autistic person, you're being criticized. Internally, your brain, your amygdala, has detected danger, the danger of not fitting in or being accepted. It's released chemicals, cortisol, the adrenaline through your body. You've chosen the stress response of fawning. The person delivering the criticism has received from you praise or admiration or a heartfelt apology, providing to them a positive experience or a view that you are having a positive, non-stressful, non-dangerous experience. Do you see how deep this topic can be? Yeah, great, Orion, but how does this actually look? Okay, cool, no worries. Let's look at it like this. So it seems like a positive experience externally, but really internally, it's not a positive experience. You're stressed. You're experiencing a stress response. How would that look? How does fawning look, or how can it look? If you have an autistic person in your life, I'm sure you've seen this before, right? Okay, so the autistic person in your life fights really hard for something. I mean, head on, fights really hard for something. But then let's say you, right? So you might be the partner or parent or carer or friend of an autistic person. You disagree and say no. In other words, they've fought hard for something. The end result is no, it's not going to happen. Suddenly, the autistic person is acting like, doesn't matter, they don't mind, no worries. They never really wanted it anyway. That's not true. That's fawning. Autistic people don't fight hard for something. You say no, and then they don't want the thing anymore, right? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, okay, I didn't want it anyway. Oh, who cares? No worry, whatever. That's fine. Who cares? Fawning, mate. That's fawning. That's people pleasing. That isn't a peaceful, positive experience for us. Just looks like, oh, well, you took that well. No, I didn't. Do you have an autistic partner who says they love you right after you express to them, negative emotions, big, strong negative emotions, maybe anger, maybe you get angry at them. Right after that, they say they love you. They're trying to diffuse the situation. They're trying to please you, calm you down. Here's a classic example of how fawning looks like for autistic people. Behaving perfectly at school or at work to the point where teachers might go, had a great day. I don't know what you're talking about, this autism stuff. Your kid's great. Or at work, whatever. But you can keep it together at work or at school, but not at home. I mean, this is fawning, man. This is people pleasing. This is fawning. You don't think school and work are stressful? Yes, it is. I fall into this trap, apologizing excessively. That's all I've got for you. That's the example. Are you like a serial apologizer? You are constantly apologizing. It's almost like I'm so sick of saying sorry. I apologize. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I feel like I can have a conversation with someone. It's like I could stop and apologize every 2 seconds. And the final one, before I get onto the causes of fawning, is not behaving in the expected way in a particular situation. In other words, maybe they missed out on something, yet they failed to behave in a disappointed or sad way. They show no frustration. This is what they should be showing in the situation, but they fail to behave in that expected manner. So they're the signs, but now let's talk about the causes. So fawning is considered a trauma stress response used in essence to establish a sense of safety. In other words, humans have a safe state and they have an unsafe state or a stressed state. Humans can be at ease or humans can be at dis-ease. Now, fawning as a trauma stress response is often developed as a reaction to repeated traumatic experiences, opposed to clearly single event trauma. For some, that might be ongoing childhood or lifelong abuse. For others, they might say being an autistic person has created long-term trauma for me on a regular basis. That might have started through bullying at school and progressed through all different types of abuse, whether it's through friends, partners, family, work world in general. Autistic people can look at this in a very different sense, in effect stating, and I agree, that just living life as an autistic person has provided me with repeated traumatic events. Over time, have caused me to use fawning, people-pleasing, as the response. Do you see where I'm going? So we're talking about causes here. So for autistic people, fawning is the go-to option because in reality, and I know there's exceptions, but in reality, we receive countless more criticisms and negative reactions daily compared with our neurotypical peers. Another cause, we're often punished or ostracized for being autistic, for our autistic traits. The things we all know about: meltdowns, shutdowns, sensory overwhelm, repetitive restrictive behaviors, social difficulties. Punished and ostracized for being ourselves. Another reason why we could choose fawning as our go-to response is actually pretty obvious when you think about it. We are actively told from a very early age to suppress our true selves. You need to do this to make me happy. You need to do this to make me feel comfortable. And this kind of, by the way, this is important not only for autistic people, but for the loved ones of autistic people. If you have an autistic person in your life, I hope hearing this provides you with a type of insight into how every interaction can be important. In other words, being encouraged from an early age, being told from an early age to suppress ourselves, to suppress our stimming, our moving, our different behaviors, will cause us to use fawning, in effect trying to please you, in moments of stress and danger. Another major cause is a completely ridiculous, unrealistic expectation basis. So autistic people are constantly held to the same standards and expectations as neurotypical people, except we don't have a neurotypical brain and therefore cannot be a neurotypical person. We can only learn how to act like one, and that's not the same. If you're going to compare us and measure us against the standards of neurotypical people, we are almost always going to fail. Another cause, how about just being labelled things that aren't true, like rude, loud, stupid, annoying, aggressive, violent, broken, bad. Yet they seem like pretty good reason to go down the fawning route. Our autistic traits and behaviours are simply not accepted, let alone praised or encouraged. Can you imagine? And the final cause, before I get onto the impact of fawning for autistic people, I think is pretty deep. One of the key causes of why autistic people choose fawning as a stress response is because our fawning is welcomed and encouraged. Autistic people are rewarded for fawning. Soak that up, my friend. Creepy. I've got some key strategies, but first, I'm really big on making sure that you as an autistic person feel seen, feel validated, feel welcome. So let's just touch on the impact that fawning can have. Fawning, aka masking, is exhausting, is debilitating. Trust me, I'd rather just punch the saber-toothed tiger in the face than say, wow, you're a really good eater. Thank you so much for eating my legs first. I just love how you're eating me. This is really quite nice. Seriously. Ironically, fawning further alienates autistic people from a world they already feel alienated in, a world unwilling to accept our differences. But there's an impact far greater than that. Autistic people fawn, they people please. But what is the cost, the impact? Over time, fawning leads to clearly toxic relationships, an increased risk of abuse, of mistreatment. None of these things are acceptable for any human to go through. Yet these are common day experiences for autistic people who have been forced into a life of fawning. There is no healthy relationships. Fawning actively diminishes your self self-worth. What happens then? It can lead to mental health conditions, to mental illness. This stuff isn't a joke. Clearly, fawning can increase the risk of abuse by your own partner, your friends, your family. If you're going to people please in the face of danger or abuse by the people closest to you, do you not think that's going to continue? This is how dangerous fawning can be. And more broadly, and this is like my own thinking out loud thesis kind of thing, right? So autistic people have a different brain. We clearly don't think and act and experience the world like neurotypical people. And I've touched on it briefly already, but I put it to you that an autistic person's fawn response can actually be misread, misinterpreted by others as a non-stress, conversely, a positive experience. An autistic person's fawn response is misread as us exhibiting a safe state. Because what we're trying to do is bring that onto you, make you feel at peace and pleased and happy and diffused. And therefore, we're doing that in a way that makes it look like we are. So it's being misread when actually we're not in a safe state. This is big, guys, right? So, and what would that do if when we feel safe, you think it's a trauma stress response. When we're doing a trauma stress response, you think we're safe. What do you think is going to happen then? There's going to be a big breakdown in the effectiveness of healthcare services, of your own personal care, both at home and in the medical world. How can it ever be effective? Nothing's viewed correctly. It's topsy-turvy. In fact, it's not ineffective, it becomes damaging. It's actually dangerous and damaging, the care given to autistic people on that premise of misreading the states. Now, I'm all about providing with validation, but also support for you, an autistic person, or a loved one of an autistic person. So let's give you some key strategies. Here's some strategies that you can use to help the autistic person in your life. Stop criticizing them or punishing them for their autistic behaviors, their non-harmful autistic behaviors. Yes, they're going to stim. Let them stim. Let them be autistic. Help them identify their feelings when faced with conflict. Here's an example. Let's say the autistic person in your life is told they cannot do something that's important to them, and they respond with, okay, that's okay. No worries. Chances are in reality, they're fawning, pleasing you. Help them identify bad feelings. And more importantly, help them experience bad feelings in a way where they're not negative to have. They're just feelings you're identifying and experiencing. Encourage the autistic person in your life to think about their own needs and not just about the needs of others. Now you might go, what a load of rubbish. I know an autistic person, they're selfish as, man. Okay, cool, whatever. What I'm saying is, if you live a life where you're never accepted and told to hide, suppress, trust me, you are the less selfish person you're ever going to meet. In effect, your life revolves around thinking about others first. And maybe it's not because you really care. Maybe it's simply because if I don't, I might be rejected or punished. So regardless, it's not true to say that autistic people don't think about others first. We're born to do that. Helping autistic people think about themselves and their needs is crucial and important. Personal examples from me. Always giving away your actual favorite foods, maybe your favorite lollies or chocolates or favorite parts of a meal to other loved ones before you have any. Or giving up the thing you really want to them because you know it makes them happy, to please them. That's a pretty basic example. Always letting a sibling or a partner or a friend do the choosing. Again, you might think that just makes sense because they don't like to do stuff and choose stuff, so you've got to do it all. In fact, not really. A lot of times come down to people pleasing. That doesn't make sense, that sentence, but it's staying in. So take that. Another strategy. Actively praise them. More specifically, actively praise them when they show self-advocacy, when they express a preference. Praise that behavior. Remember, it's not like we can't do it, but it's been so long, it's been trained out of us over such a long period, it's not something that comes naturally. So it's not actually I don't think personally, it's like a patronizing, condescending praise. It's like reminding them that's a good thing to do. Because in our mind, that isn't. Another way you could help is by modeling this kind of form of self-validation. Modeling self-care. Modeling how you validate and care for yourself. And in doing so, encourage them, or maybe you have to physically prompt them to join in. Encourage the autistic person in your life to set boundaries. Boundaries are a core issue for autistic people. Maybe an autistic child in your life is doing something with a friend at school. maybe not a sibling, they tend to be more real at home, let's say a friend at school, basically playing the games or the interactions or the activities that friends at school want to play. So basically these friends have stated a preference, and then maybe the autistic person has said, oh, I don't really like that game. And then those friends have convinced them one way or another, not usually in a good way, have convinced them this is a game we're playing, this is a game you have to play. And then the autistic person, even though they do not want to play this game, has just played the game. Right, okay, so what's an example of how you can address this? You could literally identify to them, it's very nice of you, it's very kind of you to play this game with them. I know you don't like this game, I know you didn't want to play this game. You're very kind, but you don't have to play this game. Like, are you sure you want to play this game? It's okay not to. You can add extra steps. You could teach them things like, maybe you're okay playing this game for 5 minutes, and then you might leave and play a game you want to play for 5 minutes. Give them different options so they know that they're not locked in just because it pleases others. Here's a good one. Instead of, as I said, one of the main causes, which is actively reward fawning behavior, how about you actively discourage fawning behavior? Doesn't that make sense? If you see it, point it out. Tell them. You don't need to do that. You don't need to please me. You don't need to do things that please me, make me feel comfortable all the time. This is about you too, right? These things don't always occur to autistic people. It definitely doesn't occur to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. My whole life revolves around making sure other people are comfortable and happy or pleased, because then that, I guess, makes my life a little bit better. But it doesn't, but it does. It's a paradox. If you want the autistic person in your life to be themselves and love them for who they are, self-love, doesn't it make sense to discourage them not being themselves? Thoughts, comments, topic suggestions? Let's see them all in the comments below. Again, I always look forward to reading them and getting those suggestions for upcoming videos. So thank you so much for putting them in the comments. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until my next video, I appreciate your support. We'll talk soon.